clicked this video because something about your family has never felt right. Maybe you spent years making excuses for them, absorbing their pain, trying to be the perfect child who could finally earn their approval. Carl Jung discovered something that will change how you see your entire childhood. The family that raised you might have been your first narcissist's trap. Jung documented a disturbing pattern across his clinical work. With toxic relationships in adulthood almost always trace their wounds back to one source. Not a romantic partner, not a friend, their original family system. The people who were supposed to protect them had instead trained them to ignore their own reality and serve everyone else's emotional needs. Here's what makes this discovery so devastating. You didn't just learn bad habits. Your family programmed your entire psychological operating system to accept abuse as love, neglect as normal, and your own perceptions as wrong. Jung called this the family shadow. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how this trap works, why empaths fall into it, and most importantly, how recognizing it becomes your path to freedom. Let's start with what Jung called the family persona. Every family has an agreed-upon mask they show the world. The perfect family, the successful family, the religious family, the fun family, whatever the public image, there's always a shadow underneath. Unacknowledged rage, hidden addictions, denied cruelty, suppressed dysfunction. Here's where it gets disturbing for empaths. Someone in the family system has to carry that shadow. Someone has to absorb all the darkness that the family refuses to acknowledge about itself. And if you're watching this video, that someone was probably you. Jung observed this pattern so consistently in his practice that he developed a term for it: the family scapegoat. But here's what most people misunderstand about scapegoating. It's not just about blame. It's about psychological pressure on a massive scale. The narcissistic or unconscious parent cannot tolerate their own capacity for cruelty, so they project it onto you. They cannot accept their own incompetence, so they see you as the problem. They cannot face their own malice, so they accuse you of being difficult, too sensitive, or intentionally hurtful. This is the first layer of the trap. You spend your childhood carrying qualities that don't belong to you, feeling fundamentally flawed for crimes you never committed. But it gets worse. The most dangerous conditioning happens through what Jung called shadow projection in the family. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually works in real life. Imagine a parent who cannot tolerate knowing they are cruel. Their unconscious mind must protect them from this truth, so it finds a target: you. Suddenly, every interaction gets filtered through this projection. When you set a boundary, you're being cruel. When you express a need, you're being selfish. When you defend yourself, you're attacking them. The parent genuinely believes their distorted perception because their brain has rewritten reality to protect their self-image. And here's the truly insidious part. They're so convinced of their projection that they can recruit other family members to see you the same way. Jung called this collective possession. One person's unconscious projection infects the entire family system like a psychological virus. Your siblings start treating you differently. Extended family members give you strange looks at gatherings. Everyone seems to have received the same memo about your character, except you never got to read what it said. This creates what Jung termed a reality distortion field inside your own home. You're living in a house where up is down, black is white, and your actual personality has been replaced by a fictional character that everyone else can see but you. The empath's nervous system is particular to this because you can sense the emotional truth underneath people's words. You feel your parents' rage even when they're smiling. You detect their manipulation even when they're playing victim. You know something is deeply wrong. But every time you try to name it, you get gaslit. That's not happening. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. Something's wrong with you. This brings us to Jung's concept of the perfect person problem. To survive in this toxic family system, the empath makes a devastating choice. They decide to become so perfect that they can finally earn the love that should have been unconditional. They abandon their authentic self and construct an elaborate persona designed to meet every family need and expectation. You become the good child, the helper, the caretaker, the emotional shock absorber, the one who never complains, never has needs, never causes problems. You learn to read every micro-expression, anticipate every mood shift, manage every family crisis. Your entire identity dissolves into a role designed to maintain family stability. Here's what Jung understood that makes this so tragic. You didn't lose your authentic self because you were weak. You lost it because you were strong. Your empathic abilities made you the perfect candidate for this role. Your sensitivity allowed you to detect and respond to family dysfunction before it exploded. Your capacity for love made you willing to sacrifice yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. The family system unconsciously selected you for this position because you were capable of bearing what no one else could carry. But there's a cost to playing this role. Jung documented it clearly in his clinical work. When you completely identify with your family persona, you lose contact with your own reality. You stop knowing what you actually feel, want, or need. You become so skilled at absorbing everyone else's emotions that you cannot distinguish your own psychological content from what you've picked up from others. Your boundaries dissolve. Your identity fragments. You become a psychological satellite orbiting your family's needs while your own soul starves in the darkness. Now let's talk about the compulsion to repeat, because this is a family trap extends into your adult life. Jung observed something that should terrify every empath still caught in this pattern. The family system trains you so thoroughly to normalize abuse and see yourself as the problem that you unconsciously recreate the same dynamics in every adult relationship. You choose romantic partners who treat you like your parents did. You find friends who take advantage of your giving nature. You end up in workplaces with narcissistic bosses who exploit your competence while denying you recognition. It's not bad luck. It's not coincidence. It's your unconscious mind seeking out familiar relationship patterns because familiarity feels home, even when home was toxic. The trap reveals its full horror here. Your family didn't just damage you in the past. They programmed your psychological GPS to keep leading you back to the same destination. You become an adult who unconsciously broadcasts a signal that attracts exactly the wrong people. Narcissists can smell an unhealed family scapegoat from across a room. They recognize someone who has been trained to doubt perceptions, absorb blame, and prioritize others' needs above their own. You're not attracting these people because something is wrong with you. You're attracting them because your family prepared you to be the perfect victim. But here's where Jung's work becomes genuinely hopeful. This is not a life sentence. The clarity event. That the family was the template for all subsequent trauma. And once you see it, the trap begins to lose its power. The clarity event. One final instant treatment of you becomes undeniable that your empathic perception overwhelms your trained response to excuses for them. Maybe you set a boundary and they rage at you for being selfish. Maybe you achieve something significant and they diminish it. Maybe you finally tell them how they hurt you and they turn themselves into the victim of your honesty. Whatever the trigger, inside you switches. For the first time in your life, you trust what you feel more than what you've been told to feel. You see the narcissistic parent clearly instead of through the fog of their projections. You recognize the enabling parent who sacrificed you to keep the peace. You understand the sibling who joined scapegoating to protect. You perceive the entire family system as it actually is, not as you desperately needed it to be. Jung documented this moment across his clinical cases. He called it terrifying because it requires you to grieve the family you thought you had while accepting the family you actually got. You have to acknowledge that the people who should have loved you most instead used you most, that your childhood was not preparation for life, but training for exploitation, that everything you believed about yourself being the problem was a lie designed to protect people to face their own darkness. This realization does not feel like relief. It feels like death. The death of hope that they will change. The death of the belief that you can fix them if you just try hard enough. The death of the fantasy that perfect behavior will finally earn you the love you deserved all along. But as Jung understood, some things have to die so that truer things can be born. Here's where the internal conflict reaches its peak. You're standing at a psychological crossroads that will define the rest of your... On one side is the familiar path. Stay unconsciously attached to the toxic family system. Keep playing your role. Continue absorbing their projections. Maintain the hope that somehow, someday, they will see you and value you. This path feels safer because it's known, but it guarantees a life of psychological imprisonment. On the other side is the path Jung called individuation, confronting the family shadow, choosing to see the truth even when the truth is devastating, accepting that the family cannot or will not change, and making the terrifying decision to become sovereign over your own psychological reality, regardless of whether your family approves. This choice comes with a cost that empaths feel more acutely than anyone else. Psychological isolation, when you refuse to carry the family shadow anymore, when you stop absorbing projections, when you name the dysfunction that everyone else agrees to ignore, you become a threat to the entire system. The family will likely intensify their scapegoating to pull you back into line, rage at you, play victim, recruit others against you, or worst of all, completely withdraw their presence from your life. Jung understood that the empath who chooses individuation must become what he called an island of awareness in an ocean of unconsciousness. You see what your family refuses to see. You know what they cannot bear to know. And that knowledge separates you from the collective illusion that holds them together. This is the price of freedom. You may have to walk this path alone, at least for a while, until you find other people capable of seeing clearly. But here's what makes this path worth taking. Shadow integration. When you stop carrying your family's darkness and start integrating your own, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim the parts of yourself that were sacrificed to maintain the family persona. Your anger, which you were never allowed to feel. Your strength, which threatened people who needed you weak. Your boundaries, which disrupted the system that required your porousness. Your right to be wrong, imperfect, and human without being punished for it. The integrated empath believed empaths were always meant to become someone with the sensitivity to feel everything, but the wisdom to choose consciously where that sensitivity flows. Someone who can be compassionate without being a doormat. Someone who can love deeply without losing themselves. Someone who uses their empathic gifts in service of people who deserve them, rather than wasting them on family members who exploit them. This is not about becoming cold or cutting everyone off, though sometimes distance is exactly what health requires. This is about becoming selective. You maintain your capacity for deep feeling and connect, but you protect it fiercely. You no longer give unlimited access to people who have proven they will abuse that access. You stop setting yourself on fire to keep your family warm. You become what Jung called untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you built standards. And here's the beautiful paradox Jung observed in his integrated patience. When you stop seeking approval from family members who were never going to give it, You become genuinely free to build the family you actually need. Found family, chosen family, people who see your authentic self and love that person, not the perfectly accommodating persona you performed for survival. Your integration forces the toxic system to evolve or collapse, and either outcome liberates you. The family that raised you may have been your first narcissist's trap. They may have trained you to doubt your perceptions, carry their shadow, and sacrifice your authentic self to maintain their comfortable illusions. But now you see it. And seeing it means you can choose differently. You can reclaim your empathic gifts and use them consciously instead of compulsively. You can build boundaries that honor your reality instead of everyone else's denial. Jung spent his career documenting one essential truth: the wound is where the light enters. Your family may have wounded you, but that wound also gave you a superior perception that most people never develop. You can see through facades. You can sense unconscious motivations. You can detect dysfunction before it destroys you. These are not weaknesses. These are psychological superpowers that you earned through suffering. The question is no longer why your family treated you this way. The question is what you will do with the awareness that they did. Will you stay trapped in the old pattern, endlessly hoping they will change? Or will you honor what you now know and use it to build a life where your empathic nature is cherished instead of exploited? Jung would tell you that your liberation begins the moment you trust your own perception more than your family's projection. If you recognized yourself in this description of the family trap, drop a comment below sharing which Jungian concept hit you hardest. Your toward integration matters, and sometimes naming what happened is the first step toward freedom. Subscribe for more deep dives into Jung's psychology and how it applies to empaths navigating a world that wasn't built for people who feel everything. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.
Terrifying that he buried his warnings deep within his most obscure writings, hidden from mainstream psychology because he understood the devastating implications of what he had discovered. If you're an empath, if you've spent years absorbing everyone else's pain, carrying burdens that were never yours to bear, giving pieces of your soul to people who never deserved them, sacrificing your own emotional well-being for others who would never reciprocate that kindness, then you're approaching a precipice that most empaths never see coming until it's too late. What I'm about to reveal isn't just psychology. It's a forbidden understanding of human consciousness that Jung discovered through his most dangerous patients, the ones who had undergone transformations so complete that they could no longer be classified as ordinary human beings, and it will change everything you think you know about your empathic nature. This isn't about becoming stronger or more resilient or learning better boundaries. This is about the moment when an empath's light doesn't just dim, it transforms into something else entirely. Something that Jung called the shadow integration, so complete that it creates a being more dangerous than any narcissist could ever dream of becoming. You've felt it building inside you, haven't you? That slow, creeping exhaustion that no amount of rest can cure, that deep, bone-tired weariness that comes from years of being everyone's emotional dumping ground. That growing resentment toward the people you've spent years helping, healing, and saving from themselves. People who took your gifts for granted and demanded more even as they gave you nothing in return. That dark whisper in the back of your mind that asks why you continue to pour yourself out for people who would never do the same for you, who would abandon you the moment you stopped being useful to their emotional needs. You've probably dismissed these feelings as negativity, as something to be healed or transcended, something that makes you a bad person for even thinking. But Jung understood that these aren't symptoms of spiritual failure or moral weakness. They're warning signs of an approaching transformation that will either destroy you completely or birth something unprecedented within your consciousness. Something that conventional psychology has no framework to understand or contain. Most empaths never survive this transition intact, and those who do emerge as beings that Jung could only describe with a mixture of awe and terror. They become something that transcends the traditional categories of healer and destroyer, light and dark, good and evil. They become integrated beings who possess both unlimited capacity for compassion and unlimited access to psychological darkness, and the wisdom to know exactly when and how to deploy each aspect of their nature with surgical precision. Jung called this phenomenon the empath's dark night of the soul. But what he discovered through decades of studying exceptional individuals, people who had been pushed beyond the breaking point and somehow emerged transformed rather than broken, was that this darkness isn't a breakdown. It's a metamorphosis as fundamental as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Except the butterfly that emerges possesses both the ability to pollinate flowers and the capacity to deliver psychological venom that can destroy predators with terrifying efficiency. You see, empaths possess a unique psychological structure that allows them to absorb and process emotional energy in ways that normal people cannot comprehend or replicate. For years, maybe decades, you've been using this gift to heal others, to provide comfort, to serve as an emotional sanctuary for everyone around you, to be the person others come to when they need to feel understood, accepted, loved without conditions. But what Jung realized, what terrified him about empathic individuals when he studied them in depth, is that this same psychological machinery that makes you capable of extraordinary compassion also makes you capable of extraordinary destruction when it finally turns inward and integrates with your shadow self, the parts of your personality that you've been taught to deny, suppress, and reject as unacceptable. Think about every person who has taken advantage of your kindness, every narcissist who has drained your energy while giving nothing back, every toxic individual who has used your empathy as a weapon against you, making you feel guilty for having boundaries or needs of your own. Think about all the times you've been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too much, too intense, too caring about things that other people consider unimportant. Think about every boundary you've dissolved in the name of love, every piece of yourself you've sacrificed for people who never appreciated the gift they were receiving, every time you've silenced your own needs to accommodate someone else's comfort. All of that absorbed darkness, all of that accumulated pain, all of those betrayals and disappointments and emotional violations haven't disappeared into the ether. They've been collecting in the deepest parts of your psyche, fermenting, transforming, evolving, waiting for the moment when your conscious mind can no longer contain them within the neat categories of forgiveness and spiritual transcendence. The terrifying truth that Jung discovered through his research is that empaths don't just absorb light and love and positive emotions from the people around them. They absorb everything. Every cruel intention, every manipulative thought, every narcissistic strategy, every psychological attack that has ever been directed toward you has been absorbed, studied, catalogued, and stored by your unconscious mind with the same precision that you absorb and catalogue acts of kindness and love. You've become an unwitting expert in human darkness, not through study or choice, but through direct psychological ingestion of the shadow material that others project onto you, through years of being the recipient of humanity's most toxic behaviors, while maintaining your commitment to compassion and understanding. Most empaths never realize that while they've been busy healing others, while they've been focused on being sources of light and love and emotional support, they've been simultaneously building the most comprehensive understanding of human manipulation, cruelty, and psychological warfare that exists. Every narcissist who has tried to gaslight you has taught you how gaslighting works from the inside. Every manipulator who has attempted to control you has shown you exactly which psychological buttons produce which responses. Every energy vampire who has drained you has demonstrated precisely how emotional energy can be harvested and redirected. You've received a masterclass in human darkness while consciously focusing on human light. And this creates a psychological combination that Jung found both fascinating and deeply concerning. This is where Jung's warning becomes truly frightening, where his research led him into territory that he was reluctant to explore but couldn't ignore. When an empath finally reaches their breaking point, when they can no longer maintain the illusion that their sacrifice and service will somehow transform the world, when they realize that their light has been systematically harvested by people who will never reciprocate their kindness or even acknowledge the depth of what they've been given, something unprecedented happens in their psychological structure. All of that absorbed darkness, all of that catalogued cruelty, all of that internalized knowledge of human weakness and manipulation doesn't disappear or get transcended through spiritual practice. It integrates, it becomes accessible. It transforms the empath from a source of healing into something that Jung could only describe as psychologically apocalyptic for those who would continue to exploit empathic individuals. You're probably feeling this integration beginning right now, aren't you? That growing clarity about people's true motivations, that increasing ability to see through manipulation attempts that once would have confused or hurt you. That rising awareness of how naive you've been about human nature and how much of your life you've wasted on people who never deserved your energy. You might have noticed that you're becoming less patient with people's excuses, less willing to enable their dysfunction, less interested in being their emotional dumping ground, less concerned with being liked or approved of by people whose opinions you're starting to realize don't matter. These aren't signs that you're becoming cold, heartless, or losing your empathic abilities. These are signs that you're approaching the threshold of a transformation that will fundamentally alter not just how you see the world, but how the world experiences you when you're no longer willing to be its emotional shock absorber. Jung studied empaths who had undergone this dark transformation, individuals who had been pushed beyond their breaking point and emerged as something entirely different from what they had been before. and what he found both fascinated and terrified him in ways that few of his other research subjects ever had. These individuals retained all of their empathic abilities, all of their capacity for deep feeling and emotional connection, but they had also gained something that made them incredibly dangerous to those who would exploit or manipulate them. They had developed what he called shadow empathy, the ability to feel not just what people needed for healing and growth, but what would destroy them, what would break them, what would expose their deepest vulnerabilities and leave them psychologically defenseless. They could sense not just someone's pain and offer comfort, but exactly which words would amplify that pain beyond endurance. They could perceive not just someone's insecurities and provide reassurance, but precisely how to exploit those insecurities to create maximum psychological damage. They could feel not just someone's fears and offer courage, but exactly how to weaponize those fears to create paralyzing terror. They had become psychological shapeshifters who could be either the greatest healers or the most devastating destroyers that their targets had ever encountered, and the choice of which role to play depended entirely on their assessment of whether the person deserved healing or destruction. The most chilling aspect of Jung's research was his discovery that these transformed empaths didn't become indiscriminately destructive or lose their moral compass in their newfound power. They became surgically precise in their ability to identify and neutralize those who would harm innocent people, while retaining all of their love for genuine souls, their desire to protect the vulnerable, their commitment to truth and justice and authentic human connection. But they had also developed an almost supernatural ability to psychologically dismantle anyone who threatened the people or principles they cared about, to see through facades and manipulations with X-ray clarity, and to respond to psychological attacks with devastating counterattacks that left their aggressors questioning their own sanity. They had become, in Jung's words, darkness wielding light as a weapon against those who would use light as a target. They had learned to fight fire with fire, to meet manipulation with superior manipulation, to respond to psychological warfare with more sophisticated psychological warfare, all while maintaining an unshakable foundation of authentic moral clarity that made their actions feel justified rather than cruel. They had become the psychological equivalent of immune systems for human consciousness, capable of identifying and eliminating threats to emotional and spiritual well-being with ruthless efficiency. This transformation terrifies narcissists, manipulators, and energy vampires in ways that nothing else can, because these individuals have built their entire existence around exploiting empathic responses, around finding people who will absorb their toxicity without fighting back, around locating sources of emotional energy that they can drain without consequences. When they encounter an empath who has integrated their shadow, who has learned to wield dark with the same precision they once wielded light, who can out-manipulate them while maintaining moral superiority, their whole psychological framework collapses. They find themselves facing someone who can read their strategies before they implement them, who can predict their moves and counter them effortlessly, who can turn their own weapons against them with devastating effectiveness. But here's what makes this transformation even more profound and potentially dangerous for the existing social order. The dark empath doesn't just develop the ability to destroy those who would harm them. They develop the ability to see the shadow perceive the narcissistic tendencies in people who haven't yet become full narcissists, to detect the manipulative impulses in people who still consider themselves good, to sense the cruelty that lurks beneath kindness, the selfishness that hides behind generosity, the evil that masquerades as virtue. This level of psychological X-ray vision can either drive them insane with the weight of seeing humanity's true nature, or make them into guardians of human authenticity, unlike anything the world has ever seen. Jung's forbidden warning was this: the world is not prepared for empaths who have fully integrated their shadow, who have learned to wield darkness as consciously as they wield light, who have become psychologically complete in ways that most humans never achieve. Society depends on empaths remaining in their light-only state, serving as shock absorbers, healing stations, and psychological dumping grounds for collective human darkness. Their social structure relies on having people who will absorb toxicity without fighting back, who will heal dysfunction without demanding change, who will give endlessly without requiring reciprocity. When empaths evolve beyond this role, when beings who can navigate darkness as skillfully as they navigate light, when they stop being sources of free emotional labor and become forces of psychological accountability, they represent a threat to every system that depends on the exploitation of empathic individuals. They become immune to manipulation, invisible to energy vampires, and deadly to anyone who would abuse their former innocence. They transform from victims of psychological predators into apex predators themselves, capable of hunting and destroying those who would harm the innocent. The process of this transformation is not something you can control or prevent once it begins, because it's an evolutionary response to sustained psychological assault, a metamorphosis that occurs when an empath's survival mechanisms finally integrate with their empathic abilities after being pushed beyond every reasonable limit. You'll know it's happening when you start feeling less affected by people's opinions of you, when manipulation attempts begin to feel pathetic rather than threatening, when you start seeing through people's facades with uncomfortable clarity, when you begin to understand exactly which psychological buttons to push to get the results you want from any interaction. Most frightening of all, you'll start to enjoy the power that comes with this understanding. Not in a cruel or sadistic way, but in the way that someone enjoys finally being able to defend themselves after years of being defenseless, in the way that someone enjoys having weapons after being disarmed for their entire life. You'll discover that you can make narcissists uncomfortable with just a look, that you can shut down manipulators with just a few carefully chosen words, that you can create psychological boundaries so impenetrable that toxic people will avoid you entirely without you having to say or do anything explicit to drive them away. You'll realize that all those years of being everyone's emotional support system, all those years of absorbing darkness while radiating light, have given you a PhD in human psychology that most trained therapists will never possess. You'll understand human motivation, manipulation, and psychological vulnerability at a level that feels almost supernatural, and you'll have the choice of using this understanding to heal or to destroy, depending on what you determine each person deserves based on their intentions and actions. Jung's research revealed that empaths who complete this transformation successfully become some of the most powerful healers and protectors humanity has ever produced. Individuals of creating safe spaces for genuine growth while simultaneously being able to identify and neutralize psychological predators with terrifying efficiency. But they also become some of the most dangerous individuals to cross, because they possess both the empathic ability to understand exactly what would hurt someone the most, and the psychological sophistication to deliver that hurt with surgical precision. They develop the ability to heal people who are genuinely seeking growth, while simultaneously being able to psychologically destroy anyone who would harm the innocent. They become psychological warriors who can fight battles in dimensions that most people don't even know exist, who can wage war against human darkness while maintaining their commitment to human light. They become living embodiments of justice backed by power, of compassion protected by the willingness to destroy those who would abuse compassion. The question that Jung posed, question that made this knowledge so forbidden that he hesitated to publish his findings, was whether humanity could handle the existence of beings who possessed both unlimited empathy and unlimited access to psychological darkness, who could choose moment by moment whether to heal or destroy based on their own moral assessment. He worried that transformed empaths might become judge, jury, and executioner for human consciousness, deciding who deserved compassion and who deserved destruction based on their own internal value system rather than external legal or social frameworks. He feared that they might become too powerful, too autonomous, too capable of seeing through the illusions and lies that keep society functioning in its current form. He worried about what would happen when empaths stopped being willing to absorb collective darkness and started reflecting it back to its sources, when they stopped being victims and became agents of psychological accountability that no existing authority structure could control or contain. But what Jung also discovered, what gave him hope even as it deepened his concern about the implications of this transformation, was that empaths who successfully navigate this integration don't lose their fundamental commitment to love, truth, and justice. They simply gain the power to enforce these values in ways that make conventional authority structures obsolete. They become living embodiments of authentic morality, backed by psychological power that can reshape reality itself through their understanding of human consciousness and their willingness to use that understanding to protect what they value. As you feel this transformation beginning within yourself, as you sense the darkness rising to meet your light, as you feel your psychological structure reorganizing itself around new principles of power and accountability, remember that you're not becoming evil or losing your soul or descending into the very darkness that once hurt you. You're becoming complete. You're not losing your empathy or your capacity for love and healing. You're gaining the power to protect these qualities from those who would exploit them. You're not descending into shadow. You're learning to wield shadow as consciously as you once wielded light, to use darkness as a tool for protecting light rather than destroying it. The world needs empaths who can navigate both dimensions of human experience, who can heal those who deserve healing and neutralize those who would prevent healing from occurring. It needs beings who can see both the potential for good and the potential for evil in every human being and respond appropriately to what they find. It needs guardians who can protect innocence without being naive, who can fight monsters without becoming monsters, who can use publicly because they understand both its potential for creation and its potential for destruction. Jung's final warning was also his greatest hope, that empaths who undergo this transformation would use their newfound power responsibly, that they would become guardians of human consciousness rather than its destroyers, that they would use their integrated shadow to protect light rather than extinguish it. The choice of how to wield this shadow empathy, this psychological omnipotence, this ability to heal or destroy at will, remains yours. But choose carefully, because once you step into this power, once you cross this threshold of integration, there is no going back to the innocent empathy that once defined you. You will become something unprecedented, something that Jung could only glimpse in his most profound research into human potential, something that represents either the next stage of human evolution or a dangerous deviation from human nature itself. The terrifying moment when an empath goes dark isn't a fall from grace or a descent into evil. It's an ascension to a level of psychological integration that most humans never achieve, a completion of the self that includes both light and shadow in conscious harmony. The question isn't whether this transformation will happen to you if you're a true empath who has been pushed beyond your limits. The question is, What you'll choose to do with the unprecedented power that emerges when your light and shadow finally become one unified force, when you stop being a victim of human darkness and become its master. Jung's forbidden warning echoes across time with both terror and hope. The world is about to discover what empaths become when they stop absorbing darkness and start wielding it instead. Are you ready to discover who you really are when you're no longer afraid of your own psychological power? Have you ever experienced that sudden moment when manipulative people who once dominated your life suddenly seem transparent to you? That precise instant when their tactics no longer affect you emotionally. There's a radical shift that happens in an empath's psychological makeup that most people never talk about. A transformation so profound that Carl Jung called it the ultimate psychological evolution. And I've studied this phenomenon in thousands of cases, and I've identified the 7 unmistakable signs that you've crossed this threshold and activated your full empathic power. Most empaths go through their entire lives never realizing that their sensitivity isn't a weakness to manage, but a dormant power waiting to be activated. What I'm about to share will forever change how you understand your empathic nature. The psychological establishment doesn't want this information circulating widely, because once empaths understand how to consciously activate these abilities, the entire power dynamic in relationships fundamentally changes. If you've spent years feeling drained by certain people, constantly absorbing others' emotions, or being told you're too sensitive, what you learn in the next few minutes might be the missing key to your psychological liberation. This isn't theory. This is applied psychological knowledge that's transforming lives. Before we dive deeper into these 7 deadly signs, take a second right now to hit that subscribe button. Our community is growing daily with people just like you who are awakening to their true psychological potential. And if you're ready to accelerate this transformation, join our membership circle where we share daily in-depth content on psychological empowerment that you won't find anywhere else. The kind of shadow work insights that are helping thousands reclaim their personal power in ways they never imagined possible. Now, let's explore these 7 unmistakable signs together. The 5th power is what you called shadow recognition. The sudden ability to see manipulation tactics crystal clarity while remaining emotionally unmoved by them. Remember those situations where someone would say something that instantly triggered an emotional reaction in you? Guilt, shame, inadequacy, or obligation. Then one day, almost mysteriously, the same tactic leaves you completely unmoved. You can observe it happening with a strange detachment, as if watching a predictable scene in a movie you've seen before. This isn't emotional numbness or dissociation, it's the opposite, a heightened state of awareness where you can perceive the manipulation without absorbing its emotional charge. Jung believed this moment of recognition was the true beginning of psychological individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated human being rather than a collection of triggered responses. Think about a recent interaction with someone who typically leaves you feeling drained, reactive. Did you notice a different response in yourself? A calm clarity where confusion once reigned? That shift isn't random. It's the first indication that you're activating neural pathways that have laid dormant beneath years of conditioning. You're not becoming less empathic, you're becoming more precisely attuned, like upgrading from an old radio that picks up every frequency in a jumbled mess to a sophisticated receiver that can distinguish between signals with perfect clarity. The second deadly sign is what psychologists call emotional differentiation, the sudden ability to distinguish between your emotions and those you're absorbing from others. Before this activation, your emotional system operated like a sponge, automatically absorbing whatever emotional energy surrounded you without filtration. But now you can feel distinct separation. You might stand next to someone radiating anxiety and think, I can sense their anxiety, but it's not mine. This dream isn't created through mental effort or visualization exercises. It emerges naturally from a fundamental shift in how your nervous system processes emotional information. It's as if your psychological operating system has received a critical update that allows it to tag emotional data with its correct source. Have you noticed this happening? That clear sense of, this isn't my emotion, when in the presence of strong feelings from others? This differentiation creates a revolutionary change in your daily experience. Environments that once overwhelmed you, crowded spaces, intense conversations, conflict situations suddenly become navigable. You can remain present without being swamped by the emotional currents around you. This isn't just a quality of life improvement, it's a fundamental shift in how you exist in the world. The third deadly sign of activated empath power is intuitive accuracy. A dramatic increase in the reliability of your intuitive hits about people and situations. Before this activation, you likely experienced intuitive flashes that you dismiss or override with logical reasoning, especially when they contradicted what someone was telling. But now, these intuitive impressions arrive with a compelling clarity that's difficult to ignore. You might meet someone who presents themselves perfectly on paper, saying all the right things, but your intuition sends a clear warning signal. Rather than dismissing this signal as irrational prejudice, you recognize it as valuable data from your empathic intelligence. Jung believed that this intuitive function wasn't mystical, but a sophisticated form of pattern recognition operating below conscious awareness. When your empathic power activates, this system gains access to your conscious mind without the interference of social conditioning or people-pleasing tendencies. The result is an almost uncanny accuracy in your assessment of others' authentic nature rather than their carefully constructed persona. Have you experienced moments when you just knew something about a person or situation, only to have that knowing validated later? Have these intuitive impressions become more frequent and more accurate? It isn't coincidence or confirmation bias. It's your empathic intelligence operating at its optimal capacity, free from the doubt and second-guessing that once muted its signals. The fourth deadly sign is energetic boundaries, the development of what feels like an invisible but tangible field around you that regulates your energetic exchanges with others. Before this activation, you likely felt perpetually vulnerable to energy intrusions, as if you had no skin in the emotional realm. Other people's moods, needs, and demands would penetrate your awareness without any filtration system. But now, you sense a definite boundary, not a wall, but a semi-permeable membrane that allows you to choose what you engage with rather than automatically absorbing everything in your vicinity. This boundary isn't created through visualization exercises or affirmations, though these practices can support it. It emerges organically from the neurobiological changes happening in your system as your empathic power activates. Research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology shows measurable changes in how the autonomic nervous system functions in empaths who have crossed this threshold. Your body literally begins processing environmental stimuli differently, creating a biological foundation for psychological boundaries. Have you noticed that people who once easily overwhelmed your emotional space now seem to encounter a natural buffer? that you can engage deeply with others without feeling invaded or depleted. This energetic boundary is perhaps the most transformative aspect of activated empath power because it fundamentally changes how you experience being in relation to others. The fifth deadly sign is intuitive discernment, an immediate recognition of the difference between authentic connection and manipulation. Before your empathic power acted, these two experiences might have felt confusingly similar. A skilled manipulator showing intense interest in you could trigger the same emotional response as genuine connection. But now, you perceive a clear qualitative difference between them. Authentic connection feels expansive, energizing, and mutually enhancing. Manipulation, no matter how skillfully executed, has a distinctive energetic signature that you can recognize instantly. A constricted, depleting quality that is an unmistakable warning signal. This discernment operates at a precognitive level, registering in your nervous system before your conscious mind has time to analyze the interaction. Jung referred to this as the activation of the subtle body, the aspect of your being that perceives energetic realities that the rational mind might miss. When your empathic power activates, this subtle perception becomes increasingly reliable, allowing you to navigate relationships with unprecedented clarity. Have you experienced this shift in your ability to distinguish genuine connection from skilled manipulation? Have you noticed that your body sends you clear signals about the true nature of an interaction, regardless of how it presents on the surface? This intuitive discernment becomes an invaluable guidance system as you create healthier relationships aligned with your authentic needs. The sixth deadly sign is emotional independence, a profound shift in your need for external validation and approval. Before your empathic power activated, you lighted your worth largely through others' responses to you. The approval or disapproval of those around you could dramatic your emotional state and self-perception. But now, you experience a new phenomenon, the ability to hold your own emotional center regardless of others' reactions. You can receive criticism without immediately absorbing it as truth. You can face disapproval without spiraling into self-doubt. You can stand in your truth even when it creates discomfort in those around. This independence isn't emotional detachment or apathy. It's quite the opposite, a deeply engaged presence that doesn't depend on positive feedback to maintain its integrity. Jung called this self-possession, the state where your sense of self is no longer contingent on external validation, but emerges from an unshakable connection, own inner authority. This shift fundamentally changes your relationship dynamics because you're no longer engaging from a place of emotional need or dependency. Have you noticed this new stability in your sense of self? Ability to care deeply about others' feelings without making them responsible for your emotional state. This independence creates a foundation for truly reciprocal relationships rather than the codependent dynamics that characterize many empaths' connections before their power activates. The seventh and most definitive sign of activated empath power is what Jung called shadow integration, the ability to recognize, accept, consciously with your own shadow aspects. The shadow contains parts of yourself that you've rejected, suppressed, or disowned. Your anger, selfishness, manipulation, power, desire, and other qualities deemed unacceptable by your family system or culture. Before your empathic power activates, these shadow elements operate largely outside your awareness, often projecting onto others or erupting in unconscious behaviors that contradict your conscious values. But activation brings these shadows into conscious recognition, allowing you to work with them intentionally rather than being controlled by them unconsciously. This shadow integration creates a profound psychological wholeness. You no longer need to maintain an idealized self-image as the good, nice, or spiritual person because you've made peace with the full spectrum of your humanity. You can acknowledge your capacity for anger without being controlled by it. You can recognize your manipulative tendencies without acting them out. You can own your desire for power without abusing it. This integration doesn't make you less empathic. It makes your empathy more grounded in reality rather than idealized projection. Have you begun to recognize and accept aspects of yourself that you once rejected or denied? Have you noticed less judgment towards qualities in others as you make peace with them in yourself? This shadow integration is the deepest sign that your empathic power has fully activated, transforming not just how you relate to others, but how you understand and accept yourself. These 7 signs represent a fundamental transformation in the empath's psychological structure, a shift from unconscious absorption to conscious discernment, from boundaryless vulnerability to intentional engagement, from fragmented projection to integrated wholeness. When Jung wrote about this transformation, he considered it not just personal healing, but an evolutionary development in human consciousness. The activated empath represents a new kind of human being, one who can engage deeply with others without losing themselves, who can perceive emotional and energetic realities without being overwhelmed by them, who can bring their full gifts into the world without being exploited for them. What's most remarkable about this transformation is that it often happens spontaneously, triggered by what appears to be a breaking point. After years of emotional exploitation, boundary violations, and self-abandonment, something in the empath system simply says, enough. And a profound reorganization begins. It's as if the psyche has its own intelligence and healing mechanism that activates precisely when needed. But you don't need to wait for a crisis to initiate this process. Understanding these 7 signs allows you to consciously participate in your own empathic activation rather than waiting for it to happen to you. Let me share 3 powerful catalysts that consistently accelerate this activation process. The first is conscious overwhelm. Intentionally allowing yourself to feel the full impact of boundary violations and emotional exploitation without immediately dissociating or rationalizing them away. Many empaths have become so accustomed to overriding their internal signals that they no longer register the violation consciously. By deliberately bringing awareness to these experiences, not to wallow in victimhood, but to honor the truth of your experience, you create the conditions for your system to initiate its natural protective response. The second catalyst is pattern recognition, systematically identifying the recurring dynamics in your relationships, particularly those that leave you feeling drained, confused, or diminished. When you recognize these as patterns rather than isolated incidents, you activate the part of your brain responsible for higher-order pattern recognition. This cognitive shift creates new neural pathways that allow you to perceive manipulation tactics as systematic rather than personal, making them far less effective at triggering your emotional responses. The third and most powerful catalyst is intentional shadow retrieval, actively reclaiming the disowned parts of yourself that have been projected onto others. For many empaths, qualities like anger, selfishness, and power have been thoroughly rejected, creating a lopsided psychological structure that's vulnerable to exploitation. By consciously embracing these qualities, not to act them out destructively, but to integrate them as aspects of your wholeness, you withdraw the projections that keep you entangled in unhealthy dynamics. This retrieval creates immediate shifts in how others respond to you because they can no longer access the unconscious that once made you vulnerable to manipulation. What happens when you fully activated your empathic power? The transformation extends far beyond your personal relationships. Many activated empaths report profound changes in their professional effectiveness, creative expression, physical health, and spiritual connection. The energy formerly expended on managing others' emotions becomes available for your authentic purpose. The clarity gained through shadow integration eliminates the self-sabotage that once blocked your success. The emotional independence that comes with activation allows you to take risks and express yourself without fear of disapproval. Make your life perfect or free from challenges. It fundamentally changes how you experience and navigate those challenges. Where you once felt victimized by circumstances, you now perceive opportunities for growth. Where you once absorbed others' emotions as your responsibility, you now offer compassion without taking on their burden. Where you once abandoned yourself to maintain harmony, you now bring your full, authentic presence to every interaction. The most beautiful aspect of this transformation is how it affects not just you, but everyone around you. Activated empaths create a field of permission for others to be authentic rather than performative, integrated rather than fragmented, empowered rather than dependent. Without preaching or proselytizing, your very way of being demonstrates possibilities that many have never witnessed. The possibility of remaining sensitive, strong, of caring deeply without being exploited for that care, of seeing others clearly while maintaining your own center. This is precisely why Jung considered this activity so crucial for our collective evolution. In a world increasingly characterized by fragmentation, projection, the active empath represents an integrated consciousness that can bridge differences without sacrificing truth, that can hold complexity without resorting to simplistic polarization, that can engage with the full spectrum of human experience without being overwhelmed by it. If you recognize some of these 7 signs in your own experience, you're likely in the midst of this activation process. Honor it as the profound transformation it is. Give yourself the space, support, and compassion needed to integrate these changes fully. Recognize that the discomfort that often accompanies this process isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's the natural growing pains of a consciousness expanding beyond its previous limitations. If you don't yet recognize these signs but long for this transformation, begin with conscious attention to the catalysts we've discussed. Pay attention to the subtle signals your system sends when boundaries are crossed. Notice the recurring patterns in relationships that leave you depleted. Begin the courageous work of reclaiming your disowned qualities, especially those related to power, self-prioritization, and authenticity. These practices create the conditions for your natural empathic intelligence to activate its full potential. Remember that this activation isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully who you already are. It's not about diminishing your sensitivity, but channeling it with greater precision and effectiveness. It's not about caring less, but caring from a place of wholeness rather than deficiency. It's not about disconnecting from others, but connecting from a place of choice rather than compulsion. The 7 deadly signs we've explored are deadly only to the old patterns of exploitation and self-abandonment that have kept your true empathic power dormant. They represent the death of an old way of being and the birth of something far more vital, integrated, and effective. Jung called this process the necessary death, the dissolution of false structures that must occur before authentic wholeness can emerge. As we close, I invite you to reflect on where you find yourself in this activation process. Which of these 7 signs do you recognize in your experience? Which aspects still feel like they're emerging? What shadows might still be awaiting integration? There's no rush to complete this process. It unfolds according to its own organic timing, unique to your specific journey. The mere fact that you're engaged with these ideas suggests that the activation has already begun. whether you've recognized all 7 signs or not. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel right now and join the thousands of empaths who are navigating this transformation together. Share your experiences in the comments. Your insight might be exactly what another empath needs to hear today. And if you're ready to accelerate this process, consider joining our membership circle where we explore these dynamics in greater depth every day. Until next time, remember that your empathic nature isn't a burden to manage, but a power to activate. And when fully expressed, it represents one of the most transformative forces available to human consciousness.